Nintendo's biggest failure turned out to be one of my favorite collectibles. I am the Game Collector, and this is Second Opinion Games, and today we do a Virtual Boy showcase.
Second Opinion Games.
Here is their Virtual Boy. This is the official carrying case for the Virtual Boy. This would have been at Blockbuster Video when you got a rental unit. The only thing that I did replace, there would have been a sticker that was all over this whole area right here, and I put a different sticker on it because that sticker fell off when I bought it. So when we open it up, we see the nice foam insert, and here is the main Virtual Boy unit itself. Now, you want to actually adjust these sliders to fit your eyes. All the headaches that people report is usually from not adjusting it to one's individual eyes. And that's the whole unit right there. Games go in like that, facing up. And this spot right here is where the controller gets plugged in. And this spot was not used, but some people have managed to rework it to use it for two-player. Also, the little stand clamps onto this pretty nicely. Now, looking at the controller itself, this is one of the most comfortable controllers ever made. There are fire buttons on the back and the A and B and start, and it's perfect for twin stick shooters. But unfortunately, only one twin stick shooter actually came out, and that is Jack Brothers. But you can actually play it without using the second D-pad. Now, here is where the power would go in. And you could use a standard Super Nintendo power adapter, or you could pull this part out and then put on a different piece with AA batteries if you wanted to play on the go. This controller is awesome. And here's a look at some of the North American games. Notice they always have this background of the red, no matter what you're looking at, even if sometimes they do get really weird with that. For example, Waterworld, you see the little sliver of the background in the back, and Jack Brothers, probably the two rarest games for the system. Bound High came a little bit later. It was made by Nintendo, but I don't think it was actually released by Nintendo themselves. Someone else sort of snuck this in like 2005-ish. Looking at the Japanese games, they didn't go with that weird background. This is just how it is. Space Invaders is also fairly rare. Fishing, Space Squash is a great game. When we look at the boxes, in the Japanese box art, we would get a instruction manual that was fully color. The box themselves look pretty nice. And you would have this little mail-in thing and the good old warning telling you all about stuff. In North America, we still got a full color manual, even if most of the colors are white, black, and red. There's not much else other than that. You also had the Virtual Boy warning, all this mumbo jumbo, and in the America mail-in card. So that's kind of cool. And usually something like this, a little 1-800-Nintendo Power thing. That would be in pretty much every single box. Box art itself looks pretty nice, you know, as good as it can look for the Virtual Boy. And even Bound High got a box, and that's pretty neat. All the regular stuff that's inside looks nice, and even on the back we see the Nintendo seal of approval. We see that it was made by Nintendo in 1995, but the box was created in 2012, so it's a little off on the year there. Overall, that's a pretty good look at the Virtual Boy and its controller. So let's go over to the games. Space Invaders is one of the more rare games for the system. It actually has Space Invaders and Space Invaders 2 on here, which I believe in the arcade the only thing they did with Space Invaders 2 was colorize it, meaning that because they're still all in red and black, there's like no difference between these two variants other than something with the borders changing just slightly. You could also play it in 3D, which makes it a lot more difficult if you're playing on an emulator. However, playing it in the Virtual Boy itself, it is definitely a lot of fun, even if it's just good old Space Invaders. Sometimes playing old games in your old systems can be quite a bit of fun, even if it's done all in red and black.
Mario Clash is the sequel to Mario Brothers, not Super Mario Brothers, the arcade version of Mario Brothers. There's 99 levels to this game, and you can select anywhere between 1 and 40 from the very start menu. But you're probably going to want to start at the very beginning to get the hang of the controls. Actually, playing the emulator version of this is quite a bit better because you could remap the buttons, because they managed to put the run button that used to be the B button on the left trigger, meaning that the controls are going to be kind of hard to get used to if you're playing on the Virtual Boy controller itself, even if it is one heck of a comfortable controller. Once you get past this and realize you can't actually jump on top of anything to kill it, it becomes a lot of fun. Now, playing in the Virtual Boy, it is a lot easier to throw the turtle shells and line it up with your targets because the whole depth perception thing, but other than that, the game plays really fine and is great no matter how you want to play it, either in the Virtual Boy itself or on an emulator. Galactic Pinball is actually one of the best digital pinball games, even if you don't actually use balls here. They're called pucks, and they kind of look and feel like a puck would react too. Not so much how a ball would. Now, there is only 3 maps here, and 2 of them feel like they're kind of throwaway. However, that cosmic map is a lot of fun and is filled with tons of secrets. There's actually even a Samus minigame here because this board takes place in the Metroid universe, and that is really cool, but it is unbelievably hard to get through. When I did a full review of this game before, I was probably the very first person to ever put video evidence of this actually happening on the internet itself, and no one watched it and no one cared because it's a Virtual Boy game. But I did think it was super cool. This little pinball game will have you playing for a long time because it takes a long time to unlock that unlockable. Wario Land, however, is the very best game for this little console. It's an action platformer starring Wario, and it's very similar to his early Game Boy appearances. You can pick up different hats that let you have different power-ups. There's also hidden treasures that you have to find, and sometimes they're hidden so good I still have a hard time tracking them down. The boss battles here are also super innovative with a very nice 3D effects that you will definitely lose if you play it off the Virtual Boy. I recommend definitely picking this up if you own a Virtual Boy because it is the cream of the crop. It doesn't get any better than this, other than maybe one other game that we'll talk about later. Vertical Force is that shoot 'em up for all those shoot 'em up fans out there. You have 2 different planes, one of which is way in the background and another one is moving your ship up to the foreground. There are also different power-ups like a spread shot or the epic laser beam that's really strong. Honestly, I think that the spread shot is much better. And there's also a shield icon that you can pick up. Again, stick with the spread shot because it does a fair amount of damage, and the more you shoot down, the faster you shoot it down, the less likely they are to shoot down you. However, there's other things that could make your ship go boom, like flying into the wall. So sometimes you're actually going to have to move from the background to the foreground in order to avoid the obstacles. And the bosses here are pretty cool as well. Overall, this is a fairly good game that I cannot believe wasn't remade for maybe like the Wii U or even the Nintendo Switch. Probably no one even cares about it anymore, but it is definitely something that we lost to history, especially in the crowded field of the shooter market. Red Alarm is a wireframe mess. Now, I have had some people tell me that they really like this game, but I, for one, can't wrap my head around it. If you stay in the center of the screen, well, then you have a pretty decent time flying through the corridors. But if you try to do something like hug the walls even the littlest bit, well, then you have no idea where you're actually supposed to fly, or even if you can fly into something itself, because nothing's textured here at all. And sometimes there's even some weird messages on here, like saying that it's the Virtual Boy game right in the center of your screen. This makes no sense. To me, the only real reason to play this game is to find that hidden bikini girl that supposedly is in here, but I have never been able to find it in all of my years since 1995 of playing the game. Maybe one day someone will prove me wrong, but I'm starting to think it's just an urban legend. When you've collected all of the North American games, chances are you're going to want to move on to the import scene. And Japan got a couple of games we didn't quite get. Take a look at Ismouse, where you play a first-person shooter style game, but done in the very old school way. Playing this on emulator sometimes is nearly impossible. I actually have the real game and really like it. There's multiple endings and branching paths, however the entire game's in Japanese. But if you happen to be part of the homebrew market, well, chances are there could be an English patch out there, and I probably already have one ordered, because this is an extremely fun game that I'm extremely sad that we missed out on. Also, we missed out on V-Tetris, which is just a common Tetris game with no bells and whistles. I like to call this relaxing Tetris because it moves really slow and is sort of fun and relaxing. And I like to just sort of dig myself into a huge hole and then try to work my way out of it. Overall, this is the game that I play when I feel kind of stressed. Yeah, playing a game where you only see red and black actually decreases my stress levels. Believe it or not, the Virtual Boy community is somewhat alive and kicking, and as VR keeps being pushed forward, then more people start digging into VR's past. And then that's where we found Bound High, a game made by Nintendo but was never released. People produced cards for it and even boxes, and when you start and play this game, you'll realize that this was a hit, but Nintendo already lost way too much money on the Virtual Boy to sink any more into this otherwise wonderful game. You play as a bouncy ball just trying to destroy your enemies. There's also boss battles here. There are power-ups that your ball can get, including dropping bombs, freezing your enemies in place, and quite a bit more. Sometimes you even do this awesome super bounce feature where you go up really high and then come crashing down to the ground to really explode your enemies. Overall, with the win mechanics and everything else that the game throws at you, and it's long and has a password system, so you don't have to play the whole game in one sitting, and the password's only a couple characters long, meaning that you could actually write them down really quick with a notepad off to the side, means that this could be one of the best Virtual Boy games ever made, meaning that it could be beating out that old Wario Land for the #1 spot. But of course, that's just my opinion. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I had a great time making it, and this wasn't all of the Virtual Boy games. Heck, the homebrew community is still going reasonably strong. They even got Street Fighter 2 to work on this thing. I do have myself a complete North American set, and I'm only missing like 2 games from Japan that are super rare, to the point where at one point in time, that bowling game, some people thought it was a complete and total myth and didn't really exist, but it was out there. So if you want me to cover some game system that no one else wants to play, or maybe your favorite game is something that was overlooked, well then I am your guy, because I love those hidden gems. So until later, I will see you again, guys.